The ghost of Treason! I waited for over 15 minutes when he was finally ushered into the conference room. I'd met him once or twice before, at staff Christmas parties and the like when his wife brought him in, but he never stood out in my memory, so I can't say I really remembered him. As I looked him over, I realized there was something vaguely disturbing about him. He was wearing a tailored cloth suit that must have cost a cool $5,000. He wasn't as small as I thought he would be, but he wasn't too big either. He didn't seem young or old. He wasn't meek or mild as I first thought, but he wasn't threatening either. I expected him to be stunned, maybe intimidated, but he didn't seem stunned, except maybe a little surprised. But the amusement wasn't reflected in his eyes when I looked at them. As I looked closely at his face for the first time, I realized they looked strange, perhaps threatening, or maybe just a little angry. And they were gray. Not blue or green or hazel or brown, but slate gray. The anger was only there for a second and quickly disappeared. For some reason, perhaps instinctively, I realized that this probably wasn't going to go the way we expected. I wanted to try to keep things professional, at least as much as I could, given that the reason we were here was because his wife was fucking my boss, and our firm was representing her in the divorce. I didn't like doing this, but I knew that doing a good job here would go a long way toward getting my boss's support at the next partners meeting, and I was prepared to destroy this man if I had to. I was a little surprised that he agreed to the meeting, and even more surprised when he showed up alone without a lawyer. "Mr. Smith, as you know, we are representing your wife in her divorce suit against you. We thought maybe we could come to some sort of agreement privately instead of fighting it out in court. Are you sure you don't want an attorney present?" He just looked at me politely. "No need," he said. "There's really nothing to argue here. It was just the two of us in the conference room, he and I, his wife having decided not to attend the meeting, at least not at first." "Do you mind if I record the meeting?" I asked him. "Of course, if you'd be so kind," he said, pulling a small object from his pocket, which I assumed was his own tape recorder, and placing it on the table. "Okay. First of all, the financial report you've given us is totally inadequate. You don't list any assets. House, car, bank accounts, nothing listed here." He just sat there looking at me. "You don't have an answer?" "I'm sorry, was that a question?" It sounded like an unanswerable statement. "Why isn't the house listed as an asset? In this neighborhood, they start at $5 million and go up fast. The house doesn't belong to me, it belongs to a friend. I just live there. Your wife was under the impression it belonged to you. She said she was with you when you bought it." "Yeah, well, I was under the impression she was in love with me, and we can see how that turned out. It seems we were both under a series of false impressions. You understand, Mr. Smith, that concealment of assets is a crime. And if you file this financial report in response to our complaint, and it turns out to be false, you will be prosecuted." He didn't seem concerned at all. I always watch my eyes in any negotiation, and for that matter, his eyes returned to their slightly surprised expression. I almost got the impression that he was enjoying it. "I guess Jim, by the way, can I call you Jim? Yes? Okay, I'm assuming that you researched the owner using court records and found that the house is owned by a corporation. This corporation is owned by a friend of a friend of a friend who allows me to stay in the house. So, as you can see, it is not my property." "Yes, we checked. The house is owned by a shell company that is owned by a shell company that is owned by another. We haven't traced it all the way back to you yet, but I bet at some point we can trace it back to you. You know, if I were a betting man, I'd be happy to take your money. I think if you trace it back far enough, you'll find that my friend of a friend of a friend is an elderly retired gentleman who bought it for investment reasons. And could you give me his name?" "Actually, no, I don't know that. I'm sure if you spend enough time and resources you can track him down, but try not to annoy him in the process. It's never a good idea, but I know he lives in Colombia." He let the word hang there. People from Colombia who have $5 to $10 million to buy a house for someone else should never be annoyed. "Okay, let's keep the house for now. What about the cars? Your wife lists 14 different cars, including 2 Rolls, a Bentley, 3 Shelby Mustangs, a Jaguar XK120, and an assortment of what she calls everyday cars, including a Ferrari. And yet I don't see any of this on the list of assets? In fact, if my wife bothered to check, I don't own a single car. Then again, they are all owned by different corporations, and I'm just the caretaker. I drive them and take full advantage of them, but I don't actually own them. Honestly, she's never really checked anything out. She's easily distracted by pretty trinkets, fine dining, beautiful clothes. As long as we went to the best restaurants and she had a chef to cook and a maid to clean, she was happy. But they're all employees like me, and she's easily distracted. Let's talk about your job. You eat at the best restaurants, drive a Mercedes, Bentley, or Ferrari, your suit looks tailor-made, and the suit alone must cost over $5,000, yet you list an income of $64,000. Do you seriously expect me to believe that? A bit like my wife's impressions, I'm not responsible for your beliefs. She has her opinion, you have yours, but to me, I'm just a simple caretaker. Your wife says you travel quite often on business. She says you're gone from a few days to a week at irregular intervals. What type of custodian travels so often on business, always first class, as I understand it? And that's just the $64,000 question, isn't it? But the question for you is, do you really want an answer? His eyes grew sour, and the fun disappeared. Suddenly, I didn't want an answer, and I wanted nothing to do with this sad business. But my course was set, and I couldn't change it now. Would I want to? Maybe not, but my client and my boss would insist that I get it. Fair enough. You're the middleman here, aren't you? So I'll give you some friendly advice. Before this is over, there will be damage done. And if you don't want to become so-called collateral damage, I suggest you take a vacation. It may take a few weeks of vacation. Have you ever seen a cat playing with a mouse? What? A cat playing with a mouse, pay attention. You see, the cat knows it is going to eat the mouse, even the mouse eventually figures it out, but the cat keeps letting it run away and the mouse keeps running away. Even if the mouse knows it's dead, it still tries to stay alive. But that never happens. What does this have to do with your work? His eyes are suddenly petrified. No, not stone. Stone isn't cold enough. I could even feel the cold in the room. I'm just getting to that. You see, I work for an interesting group of businessmen in a related and competing business. Sometimes they compete, and sometimes they collaborate and form alliances. Together they form what I guess you would call the cartel. Now, on a fairly regular basis, there are people who, for one reason or another, need to be taken care of. People that regular people can't take care of for one reason or another. Too protected, too visible, too dangerous for the average caretaker. So they use my services. I take care of people who need taken care of, like your boss. He needs to be taken care of. He's a mouse who hasn't realized he's already dead and he's just being allowed to run around the room a little bit. Do you realize I'm writing this down? I said. Listen to it, please. What? He pointed to the tape recorder. Listen to it, he repeated. I pressed stop, backed up a few minutes or so, and pressed play. There was a white noise coming from the built-in speaker. He picked up the device he had previously placed on the table. Handy, isn't it? Mutes all VCRs and audio devices within 500 feet. He slipped his hand into his jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope, and held it out to me. It's a death certificate properly executed. John Smith died and left no inheritance, so there's no need for a divorce. The body has been cremated. She'll get nothing. Tell her to run away from me. I won't look for her. I have few feelings left for her, but if I come across her, she will die. She has 12 hours to bury herself somewhere. Tell your boss he's a mouse and the cat is playing with him. When the cat is done, he's dead. He can run away, he can try to hide, but he's already dead. If she is with him when I come to get him, she will die with him. Tell him that if he makes it easy for me, I will do it quickly. But if he resists, I will do it slowly and painfully. Tell him that I hope he has the courage to try to fight, as I prefer to do it slowly and painfully. I suggest you take a vacation for this week. It's not likely to take longer than that. He stood up, shook my hand, and left. I told my boss and his girlfriend everything he said. The death certificate was legitimate. He was a ghost. She turned pale and ran away, and we never saw her again. I went to the Cape for a week, and when I came back, I had a new boss. Apparently, the previous one had slowly fried to death in a freak car accident. The end.